So do the angels also have free will in the same way we have free will?
So, wow, that's a big question to unpack.
I'm sorry, so I
I'm not a
apologize.
patristic
I'm
scholar,
sorry.
but here's my understanding, the best that I can give it. Short answer is yes, they do have free will. But because of the way that angels experience time, or the way that what we call time and their rough analog is, it's going to function differently. We experience time as a linear series of moments. There was yesterday, there's today, there's going to be tomorrow, right? There was an hour ago, and so forth. It doesn't seem that angels have that same kind of experience. Some of the church fathers refer to their experience as aeonic time, the time is tus aeonos ton aeonon, unto the ages of ages. So the idea is that actually humans, as we move beyond this world, we move into that aeonic angelic time zone, so to speak. There's a great book that really covers a lot of this by the author is George Metsaridis, which is called Time and Man. And if you really want to explore this thing, it's there. But the reason why this time issue is important with regards to free will is that my experience of time is that I can decide to do what's right, then I can decide to do what's wrong, and then I can decide to do what's right again. And it's because of the way that I experience time that I can express it that way. Whereas the way that my understanding of the church fathers is that when they talk about free will and angels, some of them will even say that as they come into being, in a sense, they make that decision for good or evil. And because they don't experience time the way that we do, there's no change for them. It's hard to understand because, again, that's not the way that I experience time. That's just a way of trying to describe what we see with regards to them. One thing that we do know is that the way that we experience it and the fact that we have mortal bodies, according to the church fathers, this is what enables us to repent. Angels don't have that, and so they cannot, which is why the demons will not. But it's not like they're sitting around going, I think I made a huge mistake. They don't even have that thought. Their whole motion is in terms of rebellion. Like St. John of Damascus, he says that there's not going to be any further falls of angels, that God preserves the obedient ones in their obedience, and that the saints also will not fall. I've had people ask me sometimes, like, is it possible for my guardian angel to fall? Which is the most horrifying thought that I can think of.
He flips on you.
Right. Like, imagine that.
Just change sides.
Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So yes, they have free will like we do.
Not so much.
We are not them and they're not us. Yeah. But the fact that we're not able to repent after death and that the saints are preserved forever suggests that our will is going to become like theirs. The other thing I'll say, though, is that when we speak of free will, we tend to think of making choices, right? Which is understandable. I mean, that's the way we talk. That's the way we experience life. But will, in the ancient sense, at least in the ancient Greek sense, is actually not about making choices. It's about the movement of a thing towards the way it was created, the way it's the fullness of its being, basically. So like the will of an acorn is to become an oak tree, right? It's to grow into the thing that it is. And so that means that a free will, according to the traditional sense, the traditional Christian sense, which has this ancient Greek sense to it, free will is actually not about making choices. It's about humans becoming what God created us to be. So freedom, therefore, is not about, will I do this or will I do that? Freedom is freedom from obstruction.
Right.
Like if you plant an acorn in the ground, you can do all kinds of things to prevent it from becoming an oak tree.
Right.
Its will is not free if you prevent it. But if it's unobstructed and it's allowed to do what it needs to do, what it wants to do, so to speak, then it becomes that and it's truly free. So real freedom is actually to be what it is God made us to be. It's not about like, will I have vanilla or chocolate? Will I do good or evil? In fact, that choosiness is a result of the fall, right? The fact that we waver.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So you mentioned devils, demons, Satan. Who are these? How? I mean, we know God is the creator of good only. Saint Basil has a whole homily on it, right? He's never the creator of evil. So, how does the devil come into the picture at all?
So, yeah, this is another big question. Number one, it's not clear that there's only one devil. There may be multiple devil figures. Some church fathers will say, "Oh, these two or three names are all one figure." Others will say, "No, these are two different figures." So, like the devil and the Satan, are they the same being? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. We don't really know because number one, we're attempting to wrap our minds around fallen angelic beings, which we're just people. We can't really do that. But there are some things one can say about this, right? So the serpent in the Garden of Eden seems to be a fallen seraph. Like he's a fallen throne guardian. The fact that seraphim and cherubim are basically kind of two different names and shapes for the same kind of being, this is indicated in the passage in Ezekiel, for instance, which talks about a guardian cherub who is cast out from the Garden of Eden because he became filled with violence. And so this is another version of the story of the fall of the devil, right? You get another story in Isaiah about, one who wants to raise himself above all the other stars. So there's different language that's used for the devil, different kinds of imagery. So that's one way of one sort of origin story or set of origin stories for this figure that we refer to as the devil. There's also a figure named Azazel, who is this sort of goat demon of the desert that is the origin of all sin. That's hinted at in the Day of Atonement ritual in Leviticus. It's explicit in some of the Second Temple Jewish literature that's not in the scriptures, that, to ascribing all sin to Azazel. Azazel is this other kind of devil figure. You also have a being called Mastema, who actually seems to be the spirit of a dead giant. Also some kind of devil figure. He's in the Book of Jubilees. He shows up a bunch of times. He's basically the devil in the Book of Jubilees. In any event, we're talking about some kind of leader amongst the fallen spirits. So fallen spirits can be fallen angels, but there's also indications that there are fallen humans as well that kind of take up their place amongst these. These are essentially the opposite of saints. So if becoming equal to the angels is what it means to become a saint, a human can become equal to the demons. And that's the opposite of a saint, right? So this is why in the New Testament there is a class of spiritual beings that are referred to as unclean spirits. And it's this idea of a kind of almost hybridity between humans and fallen angels. It's a very difficult thing to try to understand, but something to being unclean in the Old Testament refers to things that are brought together or mixed or touched, which should not be. Which should not be. Now, not all uncleanness is evil. Like, for instance, if you touch the scrolls of the Torah, you become unclean and have to wash yourself. If you touch a dead body, you become unclean and have to wash yourself. These are not sins.
No, the scrolls that defile the hands.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that there needs to be this washing from, but some uncleanness is evil. So while not all uncleanness is evil, all evil is uncleanness. Right. And so these unclean spirits, it's because of this is the way it was understood in the first century, is because of this touching of the human and the demonic in a way that should not be. I mean, it never should be, but it's this idea that they're so kind of tainted that they are these probably fallen human souls. Now, not everybody, you don't have to, I'm not saying you have to believe that, but that seems to be what they believed in the first century in Judea. If you want to simply say they're fallen angels, as they say, 6 of one, half a dozen of another, I don't care, because the main point is not what they are. The main point is how we interact with them, right? And we're supposed to exorcise our world, exorcise ourselves. This was one of Jesus's big ministries in the Gospels is exorcism. He's casting out unclean spirits, casting out demons all the time. This is not just some sort of supernatural sideshow to just demonstrate that he's God. This is what he came to do, is to throw these guys out. Like, okay, your time is done. You know, I'm cleaning you out so that I can put the saints in charge, right? So, yeah, it is very interesting to try to classify demonic powers and understand, you know, but they don't have order and ranks and functions the way that angels do, because their whole deal is that they're chaos monsters and rebels. So, you know, they're not like organized. They're not, you know, they don't have ranks. We do have different names for them, but they're all based on human experience of them. And so human experience of the demonic is met with the power of God, and our humility, our love, our almsgiving, our service of one another. These are the things they hate. They can't deal with that because that's not them at all. They're completely selfish, right? And so humility is the ultimate weapon against the demonic.
You know, we were talking earlier about the modern era and the kind of disenchanted world. Would you think that now that we're in this kind of postmodern era, I'm finding there are many people who are looking for enchantment now, and they're looking at all the wrong places. You know, you walk into a Chapters or an Indigo or a Barnes and Noble, and there's, you know, shelves filled with tarot cards and spell books and all this stuff. So when you're talking about this interaction, there's kind of a real danger to the curiosity in this world of demons, because there's, like you said, people are looking for experience, and they're not really sure what they're looking for and what they can encounter.
I've had people tell me sometimes, discussion of demons particularly, they'll say, you know, you shouldn't mess with that stuff, right? Don't touch it, right? And my response to that is, look, it is here whether you like it or not. This is real. You can't make it go away by ignoring it. We are experiencing the demonic. Every time we sin, we're cooperating with demons, because sin is demon power. Humans were not meant to channel that. This is why it destroys us. You know, it's a sort of a voltage we can't handle, so to speak.
Yeah, by mixture.
Yeah, exactly. We're mixing ourselves with the demonic world. So the demonic world is real, whether you like it or not. So what that means is, we don't want to encourage a morbid curiosity, you know, like, oh, I need to understand all of the darkness, whatever. No. You don't need to understand the darkness. What you need to know is how to exorcise the darkness, right? So, yes, we have been living in a long period of disenchantment. And I think particularly that the COVID pandemic, however you want to understand or agree with or disagree with the way the various governments and sometimes church leaders dealt with that, and I know it's a big, big controversy, however you understand that, the reality is that a lot of the world stayed home and stopped connecting with other people and stopped doing all the things that are kind of the last basic enchantments of human life, like for us being together.
Broke communion.
Right. It broke communion. Absolutely. And so the disenchantment of the world came suddenly very much right in our faces during that time. And I think that what that did is it pushed a lot of people over one kind of edge or another. And we know that a lot of people, that the edge that they went over was suicide. It was broken homes, broken marriages, a lot of bad stuff. But then there's also a lot of people, and like some people, the edge they went over is they left church and they never came back. Yeah. You know, but then there's some people that the edge that they were near was a more robust Christianity, which took the unseen world seriously, right? And the Orthodox tradition, you cannot get a more robust approach to the unseen world. Really, you can't. So, you know, yes, it's true that there's all kinds of dark enchantment available to us. And that's just an indication that people have this hunger. They have this desire to connect and to understand. They want to figure out how to survive in this world, right? It comes from a very good place, I think. But it promises, just like the pagan gods of old, it promises all kinds of stuff that it cannot deliver, but they're going to actually experience some real things. And when they experience those real things that they can't explain, they're going to think that that's good for them. you know, and like you see this not just with like new agey stuff that you find down at the bookstore or whatever, but also a lot of people start experimenting with psychedelic drugs. Like, well, I have experiences and
huge
something's
these days, yeah.
something's talking to me. I'm like, yes, it is. That is real. Something is talking to you, and it might seem great at first, but it's not going to stay that way, right? And I've listened to people who have gone down the journey of psychedelic drugs, and their first experience, their second experience, their third experience, some of that might have felt like enlightenment. Like, wow, I see the world in a way I never did before. This opened up my mind. Like, I even know of atheists who have done this and like, okay, the world is definitely more than I thought it was. Right? But the more you go down that path, the more it's going to not just entrap you, but it's going to degrade you.
Yeah.
You're going to become addicted to it, and it's going to demand more and more of you, right? And it's going to harm your relationships, all that kind of stuff. You know, the funny thing is, right, people did this stuff back in the 1960s and 70s. And eventually what happened is most people realized, okay, this is a dead end. The people who did that stuff. A lot of people realized it was a dead end. Well, we've forgotten that now, that lesson from 50 years ago, and it's coming back. It's coming back in full force. And those spirits are ready. Those doors being opened with psychedelics, those doors being opened with the occult, those spirits are ready to say, I'm here. I'm here for you. I'm going to give you everything you want. You're going to be enlightened. You're going to be comforted. You're going to be powerful. You're going to be smart. You're going to be wise, all that stuff. But they can't give that. They can't give it. Instead, what they're going to do is drag you down and make you, as Jesus says to certain evil spiritual leaders, twice as much a son of hell as themselves.